We have two panelists with us today, and we are looking forward to their perspectives, and then we will come back and have a Q&A with you. Our first panelist is Kimberly and Elliott. Kim is a non-resident fellow at the Center for Global Development, and she and then the next panelist will each give their perspectives for 5 minutes each. Kim, please.
It's a pleasure to be back here at IFPRI again, and it's really gratifying to see this great audience here in the middle of summer on one of the hotter days of the summer to show the interest in this topic and the desire to try and do something about it. This is a very sobering report, and so it's great to see how many people are committed to trying to learn about it and to do something about it. This year's report focused on economic downturns, and hopefully that is a factor that will reverse at some point relatively soon, we can hope. The climate change, which was addressed in past reports, is obviously something that is not turning around in a positive way nearly as much as it needs to. Doesn't look like the policies are going in that way. And so I think that's a real concern. Where the resources, the limited resources that we have are being invested, I think is a critical point. And on that, I think that there was another report that came out on agriculture this summer that I found also interesting. That was the OECD came out with their report on monitoring and evaluating agricultural policies around the world, which of course are also very important for food security. And what was striking was that report came to a similar conclusion in that the progress that we've seen over a couple of decades in reducing the degree to which agricultural policies in OECD countries in particular, but also increasingly in emerging markets, the degree to which those policies are becoming less production and trade distorting has also seemingly stalled out. And with the decline in commodity prices that the joint report today points out, with the economic downturn, we're seeing pressures to actually go in the opposite direction. And we can see that in the most recent U.S. Farm Bill, where although there weren't radical changes, it largely preserved the programs that were in the previous Farm Bill. There were some key elements of market-oriented reforms that were weakened in the new Farm Bill. We can see there are pressures in some of the European member states to start recoupling farm supports to production and to prices. And so there are some worrying trends on that front. It's not as directly related to the food security as some of the other programs that are discussed in the report. But I think it's important not to lose focus on that, in part because the 500 billion, I think was the number that OECD countries, 400 something billion dollars that OECD countries are spending on support for farmers that are mostly relatively larger, mostly relatively wealthier, are not going to things like making agriculture contribute less to climate change, or and most of the subsidies don't go to the relatively healthier products like fruits and vegetables. They go to grains and meats and things that raise problems both for obesity in some cases, with a lot of subsidies in this country to maize, which mostly goes into processed product. In other countries, a lot of subsidies go to meat, which in some countries, they need protein, but it's also clearly a big problem for climate change. So that distribution of resources, I think, is really a problem that we can't forget about. The report also, the OECD report, in terms of where support for agriculture is going, also highlights the degree to which it is not going nearly enough into innovation. And in terms of the growth of funding for innovation, it's close to zero across the OECD as a whole on average, and it's actually slightly under zero for the United States. So those are some really worrying trends in this front. In the EU, you have, whereas the US took some slight backward steps in the last Farm Bill, the EU has been increasingly tying its farm support to environmental programs and to animal welfare. At the same time, it continues to provide significant subsidies to on-farm inputs, including, and some member states are pushing to increase actually, tax rebates for fuel use. that again is a completely opposite direction to be going in. So just to conclude, the report focuses on economic downturns and makes some really important, critical recommendations on the need for vulnerable countries in particular to plan ahead, to protect fiscal space, so that they can protect social spending and safety nets when downturns do occur in the economy. Very good, strong emphasis on addressing marginalization and reducing inequality. I just don't want us to forget about the hundreds of billions of dollars that our countries are putting into wasteful and trade distorting subsidies as well that are not helping us deal with food security in a sustainable way. Thanks.